Hi guys, welcome back to another tutorial. So today I'll be sharing with you guys how I made this beautiful off-shoulder dress. It's a very simple and easy tutorial and it's beginner friendly. So if it's something you are interested in, please keep on watching and let's get started with the video. So to make this dress, you're going to be needing your strap to strap measurements. So you just take your tape rule and measure from one strap to the other. So this will give you a perfect fit for your off shoulder. So now, as you can see, mine gave me about 11 inches and I'll be keeping that 11 inches aside for when I'm going to use it. So as you can see, I already drafted out my horizontal lines on my paper. I added 1 inch at the top of my paper. This would be for my shoulder slope. So next, I took from my shoulder line to my bust point, which is 10 inches. Then from my shoulder line to my underbust is 13 inches. And my shoulder line to my waist is 16 inches. So you can see that I already labeled them. So if you're a beginner, just make sure you take your shoulder to bust point, underbust and waist. So right now, I'll be dividing my shoulder by 2. My shoulder divided by 2 will give me 8 inches. So I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. Then I'll be using 3 inches for my neck width. So I'm just going to mark the 3 inches here. I'll use my ruler to connect from that 3 inches to the 1 inch I came down by for my shoulder slope. So next I'll be taking my armhole measurement, and to get your armhole measurement, all you need to do is divide your bust circumference by 6 and add 1.5 to it. So mine gave me approximately 8 inches. So after marking that 8 inches, I'll connect it to my shoulder slope like so. That's the 1 inch I came down by for my shoulder slope. Then I'll just go ahead and draw this line like so. So now I'll just go ahead and extend this line like so. So this will serve as my chest line. So I'm just going to go ahead and label that as my chest line. So now I'm going to go ahead and divide this line into 2. So if I divide it by 2 to give me 4 inches, so I'll mark that 4 inches. And from that 4 inches, I'll go in by about half an inch. Right here, I'm just trying to get my armhole curve. So now I'm going to go ahead and connect that half an inch I came in by to my shoulder like so. So right here, I'm going to be dividing my bust circumference by 4. So my bust is 36. 36 divided by 4 will give me 9 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that 9 inches here like so. So I'll just go ahead and use my curved ruler to connect that 9 inches to the half an inch I came in by at the armhole. So this is my armhole curve right now, as you can see. So we're done with the basic pattern and it's time to draft the Bustier pattern. So what I'll be doing is to divide my nipple to nipple into 2. My nipple to nipple is 8. 8 divided by 2 will give me 4 inches. So but I'll be adding half an inch to that 4 inches for allowance. So right now I'll mark 4.5 inches on my bust point. I'll also mark it on my under bust and I'll mark it also on my waistline. So now I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect the 4.5 inches I marked on the 3 lines. I'll just connect it together like so. So next I'll come to my shoulder slope and I'll place my tape rule there. I'll measure whatever I have there. I have about 5 inches. So I'll divide that 5 inches into 2. Whatever it gives me, I'm going to go ahead and mark the midpoint like so. So 5 divided by 2 will give me 2.5 inches. So I'll mark it there. Then I'll connect that 2.5 inches to my nipple to nipple measurement that I took. So just watch what I'm doing. So I'll just connect it here like so. I'll connect it to the 2.5 inches I marked on my shoulder slope. So right now I'll be determining where I want my bustier neckline to stop at. So right now I'll place my tape rule on my shoulder line like so, and I'll mark 6 inches downwards like so. So if you want to go lower than that, you can use maybe 7 inches or 7.5 inches. This all depends on how low you want it to be or how you want your cleavage to show. So for me, I'll be using 6 inches and I'll just mark the 6 inches like so. Then now I'll just go ahead and use my ruler to connect. So this is my new neckline. So next I'll be taking my dart on my waistline. So I'll just come to the midpoint of this line that I marked in the middle, and I'll take half an inch on both sides. This is just the regular that we normally take. So after taking half an inch on both sides, I'll go ahead and connect it to my bust point like so. So next I'll come to my underbust line, and I'll be marking half an inch on both sides from the dart leg. Just watch what I'm about to do. So from the first dart leg, I'm going to mark half an inch. So you can see what I'm doing. I'll place it on the first dart leg, I'll mark half an inch, then I'll do the same thing at the other side. So if you're on a bigger side, let's say from size 38, I'll advise you take 1 inch on both sides, and if you're on a smaller size, I'll advise you take 1/4 of an inch. So right now I'll connect that leg that I came out by, I'll connect it to the waist dart like so. I hope you guys understand. Please, if you don't understand, you can replay the video. So now I'm just going to go ahead and I'll use my curved ruler to connect that leg that I came out by. I'm going to connect it to my bust point like so. So you can see how I did it. I just made a slight curve, and I'm going to do the same thing at the other side as well. So now I'll come to my new neckline, and I'll be using 1.5 inches on both sides. So I'm going to divide that 1.5 inches into 2, and it will give me 0.75. So I'll go ahead and mark that 0.75 on both sides like so. So this goes for most sizes. You can use 0.75 on maybe any even big bust sizes. So you can use 0.75. So right now I'm going to use my curved ruler to connect to my bust point like so. So I'm just going to make a slight curve on both sides. So for my neckline, I'm going to be using a sweetheart neckline. So if you want to leave yours straight, you can leave it straight. For me, I'll be using a sweetheart neckline, and I'll just come down by about 1.5 inches from here like so. So if you want it deeper than that, you can go lower. So right now I'm going to connect that 1.5 inches I came down by. I'm just going to connect it to this part like so. So just watch how I'm doing it. So as you know, I already took my bust circumference when I was drafting my armhole line, which is 9 inches. So now I'll come to this part and measure whatever I have here, which is about 1.5 inches. So I'll go ahead and add that 1.5 inches here like so to avoid any shortage. So I'll come to my underbust. I'll mark my underbust circumference. So my underbust circumference is 30. 30 divided by 4 will give me about 7.5 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark that 7.5 inches here like so. Then I'll also measure whatever it is I have here. Then I'll go ahead and mark it. So my waist as well, I'll divide my waist by 4. So my waist divided by 4 is 8 inches. I'll mark that 8 inches. Then I'll also measure what I have here, which is about 1 inch. I'll go ahead and add it here as well. So now I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect the 3 together like so. So at this point, I'll be adding my allowance to it. So I'll be adding 1.5 inches on my bust line, on my under bust, and on my waist. So I'll just add 1.5 inches on my sewing allowance. Then I'll just use my ruler to connect. So this is my allowance. So it is time to apply that strap to strap measurement we took at the beginning. And remember, when I took my strap to strap measurement, it gave me 11 inches. So if I divide that 11 inches by 2, it will give me about 5.5 inches. So now I'll place my tape rule here. On the first dart leg, you can see that it stopped about 4 inches after measuring it. So I'll skip that midpoint and I'll go to the second dart leg and place that 4 inches. So just watch what I'm doing. So this is the first dart leg. You can see that it stopped at 4 inches. So I'll just carry my tape rule. I'll carry that 4 inches like so. I'll place it on the second dart leg here. Then I'll go ahead and mark that 5.5 inches here like so. So you can see how I did it. So please, if you don't understand, you can go ahead and just replay the video. So now I'm going to be drafting my new armhole, and I will measure whatever it is I have there, which is 8 inches. I'll divide it by 2, it will give me 4 inches. So now I'm going to place that 4 inches here like so. That's on the neckline. I'll place it there, and I'll go ahead and mark it. As you can see, it stopped right on my bust point. So this is the 4 inches here that I'm marking like so. So after dividing your armhole line by 2, if whatever you get is beyond your bust point line, please just go ahead and draw a straight line like so. So now I'll be creating a new armhole curve, and what I'll do is that I'll place my curve ruler. You can see that this part that I'm placing on is not that curvy, so I'll just place it on that 5.5 inches straight to my bust line like so. So this is my new armhole. So you can see what it looks like. So now I'm going to be closing my darts, and before doing that, I'll just go ahead and cut this plate out like so. So I'll just go ahead and cut this middle as well. So now I'm going to be closing this dart. Just watch what I'm doing. So I'll just go ahead and place this place on top of the other dart like so. So you can see that there's a bit of shortage. One is longer than the other. So you can, if you notice it, you can see that one is longer than one. So you can see right here that the other line is shorter. That's the line of the sweetheart is shorter than the other one. So right now I'll just go ahead and extend this place like so. I'm just going to extend it a bit. This is to avoid any shortage when you're sewing. So if you don't do it this way, the first part might be a little bit longer than the second part, and it might affect your sewing. So I'm just going to extend it like so. So you can see what it looks like. So I'll just be cutting it out this way. So we're done with all the alterations on this pattern, and I'll just go ahead and cut it out. So just watch how I'm cutting it. And please, if you don't understand any part of the video, you can ask questions in the comment section. I'll be glad to answer all of your questions. And please, if you've not subscribed to my channel, please don't forget to do so. So any other allowance will be added when we are cutting on the fabric. So now it is time to draft the back pattern. As you can see, I already measured 1 inch at the top of my paper. So now I'll be taking my zipper allowance, and I'll be using about 1.5 inches for this. So I'll mark 1.5 inches all the way down like so. So I'll use my ruler to just connect. Then I'll go ahead and label as my zipper allowance. So I'll be taking my body measurement like I did at the front, but I'll be starting from the line of my zipper allowance. So I'll be dividing my shoulder by 2, which will give me 8 inches. I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. Then I'll take 3 inches for my neck width like I did at the front. So now I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect the 3 inches to the 1 inch I came down by for my shoulder slope. So now I'll go ahead and mark my armhole measurement, which is 8 inches like I did at the front. So now I'll use my ruler to connect. So now I'll be taking my shoulder to my neckline like I did at the front. So remember, I used 6 inches at the front. I'll be using 6 inches as well at the back. So I'll just go ahead and measure it like so. Then I'll use my ruler to connect. So now I'll be taking my armhole curve. Remember, I divided this line by 2, it gave me 4 inches. Then I went in by about half an inch. So I'll just connect that half an inch to my shoulder slope like so. Then I'll go ahead and divide my bust circumference by 4, which will give me 9. So I'll use my curved ruler to make a curve towards the 9 inches, like so. So now I'll extend this line, which is my chest line. So I'll just label it. So for the back, I'm not going to be needing my under bust circumference. So right now, I'll just go ahead and measure my shoulder to my waist measurement, which is 16 inches. So I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect. So Now I'll be dividing my nipple to nipple by 2 like I did at the front, but this time around I will not be adding an allowance. So I'll just go ahead and mark it. My nipple to nipple divided by 2 is 4, so I marked it on my neckline, my chest line, and on my waist, so you can see. So now I'll be taking my dart measurement and I'll be using half an inch on both sides. So for me, I'm not going to be using the regular dart for this, so you can as well just go ahead and use your regular dart if you want to. So I'll go ahead and take the same dart I took on the waistline. I'll take it on my neckline as well, and I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect. So I'll just be cutting this part out. So now I'll divide my bust circumference by 4. As you can see, I already measured it, which is 9 inches. So I'll add whatever it is I have here, which is 1 inch, and I'll add 1.5 inches to it for my sewing allowance. So my waist as well, I'll divide my waist circumference by 4. It will give me 8 inches. So I'll add whatever it is I have here as well, which is 1 inch. So I'll add it to this place. Then I'll add 1.5 inches for my sewing allowance. So now I'll just go ahead and connect. So I'm going to be using the same strap to strap measurement I used at the front for the back. So remember, my strap to strap measurement divided by 2 is 5.5. So I'm going to start from the zipper allowance line. I'm going to measure to the first dart leg. You can see it gave me 3 inches. So I'll continue from that 3 inches. I'll continue to this place. I'll mark my 5.5 inches. So it's the exact same thing I did at the front I'm doing at the back. You can see I have 8 inches here. I'll divide it by 2 to give me 4. So I'll go ahead and mark from my neckline to where the 4 inches is. So I'll just go ahead and mark it here, and I'll use my ruler to connect. So now I'll use my curved ruler to make a new armhole. So I'll be connecting from here to that 5.5 inches that I marked. So it's just the same thing I did at the front I'm doing at the back. So I want the back of this dress to be a little slanted at the back. So you can leave it straight if you want to, but I want mine to be slanted. So I'm going to measure 7.5 inches from my shoulder line like so. Then I'll use my curved ruler to connect from my armhole to the 7.5 inches I marked. So you can see what it looks like. So to eliminate any zip bulge at the back, I'll come to my waistline and I'll go in by about 1 inch. So I'll just mark 1 inch here like so. So I'll just go ahead and use my ruler to connect it upwards like so. So you can see how I'm doing it. So to avoid any shortage, I'll measure whatever it is I have here. I have about half an inch here. I'm going to go ahead and add it to this part like so. Then I'll come over to this place and measure the 1 inch I have. I'm going to go ahead and add it to this part as well. So I'll just go ahead and use my ruler to connect it. So now I'll be drafting my new zipper allowance. So I'll come to this line and go out by about 1 inch. Then I'll come to this part as well. I'll just go out by about 1 inch. So the new zip line won't be straight anymore. It will be a little curvy. So now I'll just go ahead and use my ruler to connect. So I'm just going to go ahead and extend this line as well. So to avoid any shortage, I'm going to be doing the same thing I did at the front. So I'm just going to fold the dart inwards like so, as you can see. So you can see that one part is a little longer than the other one. So now I'll be using my marker to extend it like so. So we are done drafting the back pattern, and now I'll just go ahead and cut it out. So just watch how I'm cutting. So this is what our back pattern will look like, and this is the front. So now we're going to be placing the pattern on the fabric, and I'll be using this beautiful Ankara material to cut it out. So I'm going to be making this as a dress actually. So now I'm going to go ahead and fold my material into two before cutting. So I'm going to be cutting out the front pattern first, and right now I'll just go ahead and pin the pattern paper on my material so it's easier for me when I'm cutting. So before cutting it out, I'm going to be adding 1/2 inch allowance to the lower part and the upper part. So just make sure you add your allowance if you didn't add it when you were drafting on your pattern paper. So I'm going to add 1/2 inch here, and I'm also going to add 1/2 inch at the upper part as well. So please don't forget to add your allowances, it's very important. If not, your material will come out short when you are joining. So now I'm just going to cut it out. So now for the side, you can see that my fabric is on fold as well, and I'll be adding 1/2 inch allowance to the upper part. Then I'll also add 1/2 inch allowance to the armhole. This is to join my sleeve together, so please don't forget to add your allowance to your armhole as well. Then I'll be adding 1/2 inch allowance as well to the lower part. So now I'll just use my ruler to connect it, and I'll cut it out. So next I'll be cutting out the back, and you can see my fabric is on fold and I've pinned it down. So I'll be adding allowance to my armhole, and please, this part also add about 1/2 inch allowance. That's for joining the darts together. So I'm going to be adding 1/2 inch here. You can see it's 1/2 inch already. I've pinned it down. I'll be adding 1/2 inch. So I'll be adding 1/2 inch upwards like so. And I'll also add 1/2 inch at the lower part as well. So I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect. So remember I said you add 1/2 inch at the armhole as well. So the same way I added 1/2 inch at the front, I'll be adding 1/2 inch at the back as well. So now I'll just go ahead and cut it out. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up this part. So now for the part of the zipper allowance, I'm going to be adding 1/2 inch here as well. Please don't confuse it. I'm adding 1/2 inch at the other side of the dart, not the zipper allowance. So I'll add 1/2 inch at this part as well for my allowance. Then I'll add 1/2 inch at the lower part as well. So I'm just adding my allowances. I'll add at the upper part as well. So I'll just use my ruler to connect it and cut it out. So you can see this is the back pattern. I'm just going to remove the paper from it, and this is what it will look like when you're sewing it. You can see how it looks. This is what it will look like. And this is what the front pattern will look like as well. So you can see how it looks. So now I went ahead to cut out my lining the exact way I cut out the fabric. So I used my fabric to cut out the lining, and I added paper stay on it to give it some hold. So it's actually optional, but I will advise you add your paper stay to your lining. So I'm going to be padding this bustier mildly, and I'll be using my wadding to do that. This is actually for it to have some kind of firmness. So it's optional if you don't want to pad it, but for me, I'm going to be padding mild. So now I'm going to place my fabric on top of my wadding like so. So as you can see, the wording is folded into two the same way the fabric is folded into two. So now I'm going to go ahead and fold this part, that's my under bust. I'm going to fold it like so, and I'll pin it down. So I'm doing this because I don't want the wording to pass the under bust, and it's better this way. So now I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out. So be careful not to cut the fabric at the under bust, so just take your time. So now that I'm done cutting, I'll be cutting half an inch off this wording like so. This will be the half an inch I'm going to be using to join the fabric to the lining. So I don't want the wording to get to the lining because it will be difficult when I'm sewing it and to look funny actually. So just make sure you cut off half an inch like so. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove my pin from it. So if I place my wording on top, it should look like this. So now I'll be doing the same thing for the sides as well, you can see. So I'll be folding that under bust as well. And now I'll use my pin to hold it down. So now I'll just cut it out. So when I get to the side, I'm going to fold it in like so. This is because I don't want the wording to get to the armhole part of it. So I'm just going to fold it in. You can see how I did that, and I'll cut it out like so. So now I'm going to go ahead and fold half an inch like I did for the middle part, and I'll cut it out as well. So now I'm going to be cutting half an inch also at the armhole. So I'll just fold it like so, and I'll cut the half an inch out. So this is what it will look like. So right now I'm going to iron the wording on my fabric, and before doing that I went ahead to pin it down. And before ironing, make sure you place the gum part on the fabric so you don't make a mistake. The gum part will be directly on the fabric. So now I'm going to go ahead and attach it together. So I'll use my pin to hold it down before taking it to my sewing machine. So I'm just going to make sure I place them on top of each other properly, and I'll pin it down before going ahead to sew it. So I'll pin the other side down as well. So remember, the underbust should match each other when you're pinning it down. So at this point, I'll take it to my sewing machine and use half an inch to attach it together. So now I'm done sewing, and you can see what it looks like. So now I'm going to be making a notch, and I will start from the underbust. I'm just going to carefully make a notch, and I'll also make notches at the cupped part as well. So I'm just going to make notches, so this will make it easier when I'm ironing, and it will come out very well after ironing it. So just make sure you notch it. So after notching, if I flip it over to the other side, this is what it looks like even without ironing. So you can see what it looks, but I'll go ahead and iron it and you'll see the outcome. So before ironing, I'll open this middle part up like so. So this is where I'll be ironing. So if you have a breast ball or a breast ham, you can place it on top. It will be easier to iron, and this cupped part will come out very well. So you can see what mine looks like. So now it's time to join the back, and you can see the way I placed it. This is how it should look. So now I'll go ahead and flip this part over like so, and I'll use half an inch to attach it together. So I'm done attaching it, and I went ahead to iron, and you can see what it looks like. So I also went ahead to attach my lining together and iron it the exact way I attached the main fabric, so you can see what that looks like as well. So now it is time to attach my lining to my main fabric, and I'll be placing the front of the lining on the front of the main fabric. So I'll make sure they match each other, and I'll use my pin to hold it down so it will be easier for me when I'm sewing. So I'll flip it over to the other side and I'll use 1/2 inch to sew it. Remember, you're not going to be sewing your armhole, so I'm just going to use 1/2 inch to attach it to the lining like so. So you can see the places I'm pointing at, that's where you'll be sewing. So after sewing it, I'll go ahead and make notches around it so that it will come out looking very neat. So if I flip it over to the other side, you can see what it looks like. So you can see how neat it's looking. So you can go ahead and top stitch on the lining to make it look neater if you want to, but for me, I just put hemming gum in the middle of the lining and the fabric, and I ironed it on top, and you can see how neat it is looking. So now I'll be joining the lining of the back to the main fabric of the back, and I'll be doing the same thing I did at the front. I'll place the front of the fabric facing the front of the lining together. So I'll just place them on top of each other like so. So I'll just go ahead and pin it down. So now just follow my hand. I'll be using 1/2 inch at the top and I'll be using 1/4 inch on the side. So after sewing, I'll just go ahead and trim the edge like so. I'm just going to trim it a little bit. Then I'll flip it over to the other side. So once I'm done flipping it over, I'll just go ahead and iron it. So after doing that, I went ahead to join the skirt part of this dress to the upper part, and I also went ahead to add my zips. So if you don't know how to draft a skirt pattern, I'm going to be attaching a link in the description box to do that. And I also went ahead to join the upper part to the skirt pattern as well. So at this point, I'll be cutting out the sleeve for this dress, and the width of the sleeve is about 23 inches. This is going to be like a puffy sleeve, so depending on how full you want it to be, you can make yours longer or wider than this. So mine is 23 inches. So this sleeve is going to be having an elastic because it's a very full sleeve, and now I'm going to be creating a casing for the elastic. So now I'll place the elastic band on top of my material like so, and I'll fold it in to make sure that everything aligns so that when I'm sewing it doesn't come out short. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold it in, and I'll mark that part that I folded in. So once I open it up and use my tape rule to measure, what I have there is about 3 inches, as you can see. So remember at the beginning when we were drafting the pattern, I measured 6 inches for where I wanted my neckline to stop. So now I'm going to be placing that 6 inches on the 3 inches that I marked for my elastic casing. So I'll carry that 6 inches all the way to where I want my sleeve to stop. So for my sleeve, I want it to be 23 inches long, but I'll be making it 24 for my allowance. So I'll be measuring 24 inches from the 3 inches that I marked. So I hope you guys understand. If you don't understand, please replay the video. So now I'll go ahead and mark 24 inches all the way, and I'll use my ruler to connect. So you're going to be cutting out 2 pieces of this for the left and the right sleeve. So now I'm going to be folding that elastic casing, and I'll go ahead and use my pin to hold it down. At this point, I want to cut out the armhole for the sleeve. So I'll just use my pin to hold it down. And please remember your material should be on fold. So now I'll go ahead and place my front pattern on my sleeve like so. So you can see what I'm doing. I'll just go ahead and place the armhole on the sleeve like so. So I'll be using this armhole to cut out the sleeve. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out. So this will be my armhole for my sleeve. So you'll be doing the same thing for the other sleeve as well, or you can just place both sleeves on top of each other when you are cutting. So now I went ahead to add my elastic to the lower part of my sleeve That's before joining it to my fabric. So I went ahead to add the elastic. So now I'll be adding elastic to this part, that's the upper part of the sleeve. But before doing that, I'll go ahead and fold it into two and run a stitch on it. So just watch how I'm doing it. That's the allowance we left for the elastic casing. I'll go ahead and fold it in like so, and I'll run a stitch on it. So now I'll be adding my elastic to it, and I'm just going to use a safety pin to insert the elastic inside the casing. So to measure the elastic, that will be enough. You can go ahead and divide your bicep into two. Whatever it gives you, just add about 3 inches extra for it so that it won't be too tight. So now I'll be joining the sleeve to my dress before joining the dress together, and what I'll do now is that I'm going to face the front of the sleeve on the front of the material. Can you see that is matching each other? So I'll just face both of them like so, and I'll use my pin to hold it down. So I'll just use 1/2 inch to attach it together on both sides. So your sleeve should look like this after attaching it together. This is what mine looks like, as you can see. So now I'll flip it over to the other side and use my body measurement to sew the front and back piece together, including my sleeve. So now I'll just place them on top of each other like so and use my body measurement to attach. But before doing that, I'll go ahead and pin them down so it will be easier for me when I'm sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and pin the sleeves down as well. So after pinning, I will just use my body measurement to attach it together. So I'm done attaching the front and back piece of my dress together, and you can see what it looks like. I also went ahead to close the slits of the dress, and at this part I'm going to be using hemming gum to close this part. I'll just use hemming gum to fold it inside, and I also went ahead to hem the down part of this dress as well. So all it needs right now is to iron it, and please, if you don't understand any part of this video, you can always ask questions in the comment section. I'll be glad to answer all your questions. And please, if you've not subscribed to my channel, please don't forget to do so. I'll really appreciate it. And we've come to the end of today's tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.